Hi, I'm Stephanie Olkers, and welcome back to another iteration of McAfee Answers. Today, our topic applies to many of us in a post COVID world, working remotely securely. And here today is McAfee's Chief Information Security Officer, Arve Kjoelen. Hey, Arve.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's great to be here. So our agenda today, we'll be talking about working securely from home. And I want to start by talking about the big change that was introduced by COVID. And then we'll talk about some specifics around how to secure your work environment from home. We will talk about your Wi-Fi router and password. We will talk about securing your work device. And we will talk a little bit about how your network is set up at home. With COVID, things changed fairly dramatically when it comes to working from home. When COVID hit, I was supposed to travel to India for work. Instead, I ended up stateside in the United States, helping the company adapt to having most of our people work from home rather than work from the office. And there were a number of things that were challenges both for us as well as for other companies. The first question was, did people even have the equipment to work from home? We had transitioned mostly to laptops, and so people could take their devices with them. There were companies that had desktops, and so those are not as easy to pick up and to take home with you. And then many companies struggled with being able to accommodate enough workers at the same time to connect into their systems and to their VPNs. Another challenge was your endpoint security. Endpoint security in organizations can vary. Some people will have it deployed to all their systems, and some other employees will proceed with the assumption that, well, we are in a secure area, and so we don't need endpoint security for all of our users. And if you're in that situation and then all your users take their computers home, they will be much more exposed. So a portion of this massive shift has now become permanent. Some companies are embracing the change. Other companies are demanding that employees come back. And some are in between and are enticing their employees. And if you're watching this webinar, you're likely in one of those categories and curious about what you can do to secure your homework even more than you are today. So let's talk about your Wi-Fi router and password first. Your Wi-Fi router is what comes with your internet connection. That will normally be provided by your what is called your ISP, so your telco. That may be Frontier, it may be a cable company, it may be a number of different providers, but it will come pre-configured with a password. You should make sure that the password that you use is a secure password, meaning it is a long password. It's longer than 8 characters. It is not a dictionary word. And it's also a password that you are not using anywhere else. So make sure that your password for your wireless is a unique password. And then you have to think about, what do I want to do when I manage visitors to my environment? Do I give them my password? Or how do I manage that? And we will get into a few different ways of connecting or setting up your network a little bit later. But for now, think about how many of you or how many of us have our Wi-Fi password on the wall, written on a sticky note so that when visitors come, we can show it to them. And how many of us have that same password that we have always had? So this is one area where it will be important for you, regardless of how you choose to manage visitors, to change your password on a somewhat regular basis. The difficulty with changing a password is that if you have a lot of devices, all of your devices have to reconnect with a new password. And that overhead causes many people not to choose to change their passwords. But what I want you to think about is all of the people who have been in your house for a day or for a week or for a month, your password is not on their device. And if something happens to their device, then your password could become available to others as well. One thing you should think about is that you want to follow all the guidance that your employer is giving you. And so if you are already with an employer who has provided you a laptop for use, you should be using that laptop. If it comes pre-installed with malware protection, you should be using that malware protection. So the procedures that your employer may have determined that you should use are procedures that you should always follow and continue to follow. But for those of you who work for employers who haven't provided a lot of guidance, this session will be for you, and we will give you some additional tips. Now, McAfee is a brand that has been around for many, many years. And as you know, we got our start protecting users and protecting their end devices, and that is still the main thing that we do. I am responsible as Chief Information Security Officer for protecting McAfee from external threats, as well as protecting our employees and our products. And when we think about threats or things that could go wrong, we think about three ways of doing something to them. The first one is to prevent them from happening in the first place. And the malware protection product, our McAfee Plus product, which you will see here, was released in October. It's a great way of getting that protection. But depending on what your specific scenario is, it can also be useful to detect and to respond when there are problems. So for instance, our credit monitoring or our identity theft protection products, you can do a lot to protect yourself from identity theft and to prevent it from happening. But if it happens, you're going to want help detecting it because it may not be immediately obvious to you. That is something that the product does. And secondly, you may want help responding. So lost wallet assistance, identity restoration, those are some of the features that we are building into our product. I would like to spend a minute giving you some insight into how malware products work today. Nearly all antivirus protection programs have two components. The first component is we collect from the millions and millions of customers that we have lists of, you can call them features or identifiers for things that we know are bad. And so we can tell a particular file that is known to be bad. Once we know that one person has had a problem with one particular file, we can use that data across all of our customers to make sure that all of our customers are protected from that one particular file. And it is the same for websites. We can protect users from specific websites once we know that a particular website is bad. And we and other providers, of course, do the same. We put a lot of effort into identifying what those malicious sites may be or what those malicious files may be. And we even the industry shares this information so that should McAfee find something and should you be using a different product, the largest providers share a threat network so that we can provide that data to other providers and you can benefit from that even if you're a subscriber to another product. So that is the known bad. But the bad actors are very crafty and will disguise what they do. And so it is not feasible to keep up with all of the variations and put together a list of all of the possible variations. And so because of that, the second thing that the industry does, including McAfee, is we use something called machine learning to identify things that are bad just based on how they behave. So there may be something brand new, a brand new virus out there, a brand new malware that no one has detected yet. But as it runs, say on your machine, we may observe how it behaves and recognize that the way that it behaves is not the way that a normal program behaves. And so based just on how the program works on your machine, we may be able to detect and block that to protect you. So those are the two ways that we protect users: through known files, known indicators, known websites, known domain names, known IP addresses on the one hand, and then through machine learning on the other hand. Now, I'd like to take a moment to talk about risky behaviors. Risky behaviors on the internet can mean a variety of things, but what you should keep in mind is that your behavior when you are at the computer is at least as important to protecting you as your technical safeguards. And so risky behaviors online may sometimes equate to impatient behaviors. Perhaps there is a program that you want to download and you are in a hurry, and you may get warnings and you're disregarding the warnings because you just want to get to the end point. You're busy, you're in a hurry, and you need to get something done. That is one warning sign. But many of the risky behaviors involve thinking about whether you are trusting other people and whether you should trust other people. So you may be getting an email with an attachment. You may be getting an SMS message with an attachment, or a link. And even more, we have begun to see on social media fake profiles and users connecting with you on social media that are not real users, and they are connecting with you for the purpose of establishing a relationship, getting you to trust them a little bit, enough that you will take some action on something that they will send you. And so to illustrate the fact that you should not trust everyone on social media, here is a story from October 20th of this year from a known security journalist, Krebs on Security. And what you see here is that Krebs found that a third of the LinkedIn profiles for two prominent US companies were completely fake. These profiles do not appear to have been real. And just in one day, many of them got removed, presumably because they were fake. And you see that that is several 100,000 people who claim to work at some of the largest companies in the US. And so you may get a connection. It may even be someone who claims to work for your company that you don't know. Or you may get a connection from someone who claims to work at your daughter's company or your friend's company. But be wary, unless you know this person, unless you know that this person is attempting to connect with you, be very careful to accept connections such as that. Some of the things that we have seen, once they establish trust, what people will do is try to send you something to open. It may be, here's a document I'm having trouble with. What we have seen a lot on the business side is fake recruiters, people saying, hey, here's this job opportunity available to you. Here's the job description. Please go ahead and open it. Well, if do not accept connections from unknowns. And if you do have connections that you do not entirely trust, do not open those types of attachments from them. Now, when it comes to your home network, we can do a couple of things to increase the security of your home network. And so I will show you a couple of common ways that this is done and talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do. But I mentioned earlier that your visitors, when they leave you, your home network password will be on their devices. That may be one concern for you. Another concern that you may have is, what about all the other devices that are on your network? How do you know that those devices are secure? I recently obtained an oven with wireless capabilities. And my wife wanted us to connect it to the internet. And the way that she looked at it was, I think, very similar to the way that many of us look at it. So a device, let's say it is a printer, or it is a programmable oven or a thermostat, our first question may be, what is the big deal if I connect that to my wireless network? If I connect it to my wireless network, what is the worst that can happen? Is someone really going to want to change my temperature in my house or turn my oven on? That seems silly. But I think what we fail to think about sometimes is that when those things have been used in the past to attack companies or attack individual users, think of all these devices as computers. So rather than thinking of what can that device do in and of itself, say a printer, think about what can someone do with full access to your network? Because if they access your printer and they have full access to the printer, think of the printer as a computer. That is the same as them being plugged into your network. So one thing that is important when you think about how you want to secure your home network is, do you want to isolate your work computer from everything else that is in your environment? And you may wish to, but as in everything else, there is a trade-off between how much time and effort you will put into security versus how convenient it is to use and manage the result. And so a common setup for a home network is one where you have a home network and you have a guest network. And most of the devices that you will get, if you have a device from your cable provider that provides you Wi-Fi, that will likely have two different networks. So it may have a network that is named, that you may have even renamed, and maybe you named it Home, My Home. Well, it will come with a guest network as well that you can make, that will be named My Home Guest. Well, now you can decide, who do I put on the home network and who do I put on the guest network? And the most common way is to say, well, I want to keep my home network just for myself and my family, and then I will let guests who come into the house use the guest network. And it's a very, very common way of setting things up. And the advantage there is that all your guests coming in and out, they're using your guest network. And so they are not on your home network and they don't have access to it if something should happen to their devices later on. Many people, however, find this difficult to manage because their guests, depending on how you use things, perhaps your guests are using your printers, or perhaps your guests are displaying content on their mobile device and wanting to display that to your TV. So it can be difficult to manage even this very common setup. Another way of setting things up is to reverse this and putting yourself on the guest network. If you did that, you could perhaps only have your work device on the guest network, and everyone else can be on the home network. They can use their devices, they can use the TVs. I think this may require you to be a little bit savvy tech-wise, because if you now need to connect to your TVs or connect to your printer, you are the one who's going to need to go and change the configuration on your work computer to make it possible for you to do that and connect to your homework instead of the guest network. Many wireless devices do not allow computers on the guest network to talk to each other. So you can get into a situation where you are really safe and secure on the guest network because everyone else who connects to the guest network, they still can't connect to you, but that can isolate you even more, and in some cases even make it harder to manage the solution. But if you're willing to try this, this can bring you some benefit, going with a situation or a configuration where you connect to the guest network. The final setup I'd like to talk about today is a setup where you have much more physical separation. Setups like this are common with executives. They are also common with higher security environments. So depending on your employer, you may already have an employer who has mentioned something like this. Or I know, for instance, many people in the tech industry who do configure things like this for themselves, because it provides a lot of extra security. But again, it takes a little bit of extra work to set up. So the idea here is you run everything else the way that we talked about before, where you have your home devices, your home users on a network, on a wireless network. You may even add guests to that network or keep them separately. Now, what you do with yourself is purchase a firewall device, and you can see this firewall picture here. The idea is that you purchase one of these. They can range a couple of $100. Some common vendors you will see are there: Ubiquiti, Netgear, Fortinet, Cisco. They all provide these devices. And the idea is that you connect through that device so that even if everything else goes wrong in your home network, and you have big problems there, you are protected because you are behind this firewall. And so what I'd like to say, just to wrap things up, is that there are a couple of aspects to protecting yourself. Number one, protecting your work device. You do that through endpoint products such as McAfee Plus. You can expand that protection so that you have better control over and better monitoring of identity theft. You have some help with identity restoration. And so that is number one, a product that protects your device as well as your identity, your online life. The second part is you. Make sure that you do not take risky decisions online, that you think about what you do and that you know the people that you communicate with and that you open attachments from. And then the final piece is the network itself. This is where things can get technical. There are multiple ways of setting things up at home, but think about the fact that if you want additional protection for your home computer or for your work computer at home, there are various ways where you can separate and segregate that computer from the rest of your environment. And with that, we will take some questions and turn it back to Stephanie.
All right. Thank you so much, Arve. That was very educational. We appreciate you walking us through that. I think after your presentation, I think the biggest thing that everyone wants to know is whether or not you actually connected the stove to your network. I have a husband that wants to connect everything as well, so I can feel for you a little bit there.
Thanks, Stephanie. I will admit, we have still not connected that stove. So so far we haven't made any changes there. And when it does get connected, I think it will get connected in one of those configurations that you saw, so that it's kept separate enough that if something happens, I don't have to worry about other devices that are on my home networks.
All right. So another question that has came up was you talked about malicious files and websites. How can customers submit those files to McAfee if they think they come across one?
Yes, so we have automated classification of websites as well as files. And so the classification is really built into our products. Now, something that is not built into our product is if someone were to send you a scam message or a spam message pretending to be from McAfee. And so that is something that we really want and need our customers to report to us so that we can go ahead and make sure that those things are taken off, or So, the way to do that is to email spam@mcafee.com with any type of spam or scam that you are receiving, and we will take it from there.
All right, so you talked about a lot of things, a lot of really great things in this presentation. But if you were to tell someone one thing to start or stop doing to better protect themselves while working remotely, what would it be?
Yes, I think the biggest single thing that you can do is make sure that your work device that you're using for work is protected with some sort of malware protection. As I mentioned earlier, if your company provides that, wonderful, use that. If they don't, get McAfee Plus, get it installed on your system. You will also then, if you cover your mobile device with that, if you read things on if you do work on your mobile device, that's another benefit. And this product has many features that we haven't even talked about. We talked a little bit about identity protection, credit monitoring, of course, the base malware protection, but it also has VPN. And so it's great product. You have to get something like that on your endpoint. I think that is step one.
Arve, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, if you have any questions, we are here to help at McAfee. You can reach us at www.mcafee.com/support. We have tons of self-help articles, and you can see all our other videos here at this YouTube channel. Thank you. We'll see you again later.